Hello, good evening, Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. And with me this evening is none other than Leader Up MP, Mr. Heyliger. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, Oral, and good evening to all the televiewers. Thank you for having me on the program. Great pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for accepting the invitation. A lot of things have been happening. The last time I was here was early this year.
That's right.
And you said, well, you're going to have a government supported by 10 members of parliament.
Yeah.
But what happened? What went wrong? Because we're having all these problems right now.
You know, Oral, it's ironic that every time I come on your program and I make a prediction or a major statement, then something something major goes on. When I had announced that I wanted to be the prime minister, that's when the Dutch came in, and that was after coming out on your program. And I think that we did a program earlier this year, and I told you, it's a lot of individualism and a lot of chaos going on within the MPs itself, and then I think a few weeks later, then we had the break within the coalition that we have. Yes, Oral. It's a real pity. Now you have the fifth government in 5 years. You have had certain ministers constantly changing. I think now the fifth commissioner of education, minister, sorry, of now tourism. You don't have the opportunity like we had in the past where you carry out a program and you're able to make sure that you develop it and get it going and make sure to get the hiccups out of it and carry on. And it's a very terrible situation what is going on for the country. And you have the voters themselves, people like yourself, people like the business community, and they question what is the situation in St. Maarten. And I try to categorize it that before a list is put in to run, everybody is the most humble person, the most party loyal, party going person. Theodore, the greatest they have, and then the day that we sign the list, then everybody breaks loose and becomes their own little party by themselves. And and it's unfortunate of what has transpired over the last few weeks.
Now, 5 governments in 5 years, we've had this change where, the late Mr. Edgar Lynch changed the rules and how persons get elected. It's no longer your position on the list anymore, but how many votes you got.
Correct.
You think that is the real issue here?
No, that's not the real issue, Oral, because again, look, if you go back to that system before that, so what it was is basically the party leader puts you forward, or the party leader and the most at the board or the most senior advisors of the party put up your name, and then you're placed on the list. And then I believe how it went prior to the change of the late Edgar Lynch was that you had to have, I believe, it was either a third or a half plus one, and then you would also be able to get a seat. So you would move, say, if you were number 23 on the bottom of the list, and the party had 7 seats in the case of the up, you would move from there. If you beat out the other top 6 or the top 7 or whatever, you would move in. So I don't think that would have really made a difference per se, because usually what you would have done as party leader, then you put your more senior battle hardened individuals, the ones that are more loyal to the party, to the top of the list, so that you can know that you're going into government with there. And then you put more of your rookies down on the bottom of the list, let them taste, let them feel what it means to run an election, and then they also continuously walk towards getting the higher numbers that you have. In this case, I mean, I've had one of the most well-known persons that I've ever had around me, one of the MPs, Maurice Lake, and he decided to leave the party. So if even in terms of the laws changing to go back to that old system, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. If you really want to make a difference, or you have to change the whole system itself. And a lot of people were saying, but listen, it belongs to the party. And in the problem that we have, or the challenge that we have in our country today, is the fact that prior to the election process, it is the party that the law looks at. So you get established on the party. The day before the postulation day itself, the party is the figurehead. The party has to show its finances. The party has to show everything in regard to that. The party must have its Congress, the whole works leading up to the election. Now, the election night, when the seats are known, basically the party disappears and those individuals get into parliament. And if you try to change the system, you will hear those constitutional experts argue the fact that, listen, it is the individual that actually takes the oath and not the party that takes the oath. So if you're taking the oath, then it's no longer the party's position, it is the oath that you're taking. And again, the argument goes on, yeah, but the guy didn't really elect himself because it took another nearly 1,000 votes from the party to get him elected. How do you stop that? And I look at it that the system itself for this small island, it is just too cumbersome. The parliamentary system that is basically used by the Netherlands is what we implemented in St. Maarten. If you look at the British Caribbean, if you look at other larger countries itself, well, listen, let us go a little bit more radical, or let us elect a prime minister for the country. Let that prime minister then put in a council of ministers that actually now can govern the country for the 4 years that we have. And you can also have a parliament that is elected as well, but doesn't constantly be changing government. You can change the policy of parliament, but you can't change that every minute that government is changing because, somebody didn't get a job or something like that.
But how fast are you prepared to make changes, because you all have been in government for 5 years, in parliament for 5 years, and in that 5 years, members of parliament made no effort make these changes?
Well, the whole issue is that if you got so many changes, not only in government but also in parliament, because certain members become ministers, then certain members come back out, certain members give up their seats. So you had a huge, let's call it discontinuation within there. And then at the same time, the ones that are constantly moving from party or whatever, well, they will never vote for a constitutional change. This would require a constitutional change, which would require a 2/3 majority in parliament to make these changes. Now, as I think that the Prime Minister stated, the turkey isn't going to invite himself for Thanksgiving dinner. You understand? So the issue is for you to get a parliament that wants to make a radical change in our electoral process is going to be quite hard. I think, though, I'll tell you something, it is the only way that we can move this country forward. And then, whoever wins the election, or you could even look at the system like what the French have, a runoff. Right now, the machine is broken and it needs a major overhaul. So whether we look a British system, whether we look at the US system, whether we look at even the French side system, our system does not work and it needs to be fixed.
But it will have to fit within the framework of our constitutional arrangement with the Dutch.
Correct. And you would have to have discussion with them too. And I think they realize the same situation that, it used to be Curacao had oral governments changing every weekend. But now, St. Maarten has become, St. Maarten used to have the most stable government within the kingdom. And we used to be able to pride ourselves on that fact. And now we have the most unstable government within the kingdom. And that's not a good record to have.
When you look at all of this that's taking place right now, all the ship jumping, etc., the island is suffering. Do you support the actions of the Council of Ministers under the leadership of Prime Minister Mr. Gibbes?
Well, let me put it this way, Oral. No one wants, and including me, wants to go and say, yes, we're going to have another election just about a year and 2 months after. But I think a clear message has to come out to the population that this kind of nonsense no longer is just allowed and continued. So in this case, I will have to agree with him for the stance that he's taken, because again, the Prime Minister himself when confronted and asked, okay, what is the reasoning behind the motion of non-confidence or the withdrawal of support, cannot tell you, and I can't tell you exactly what it is, because usually, Oral, I mean, if you have a dissatisfied member, they would be able to speak out and say, listen, I am not going to vote for this law, say for example, higher taxation on the business community, or withdrawing pensions from our elderly. I'm just giving you examples and saying, well, this is a philosophical position for me, and I can no longer support the party that is pushing this forward. But you can't come and tell me that because maybe a road wasn't cleaned or fixed, or one guy didn't, or two people didn't get a job, that you're going to tell me for the people you're throwing down a government. I mean, that's not how it works, Oral. I mean, if you're a mature politician, you understand what it means to move a country forward. You would also understand what it takes to put a government together. I mean, look, in the last year, Oral, we've fought with the Dutch. You've had serious situations with the budget of the country. You've gotten what they call in Dutch aanwijzingen from the Kingdom Council of Ministers on the position of Sir Maarten. You have tried to build back your relationship with the Dutch. You have tried to come with balanced budgets, all of this part of the new country. And your MPs must understand, and I've said it before, that with political power also comes the position of being patient and having perseverance. You can't tell me that in less than a year that the government has had, that you wanted to see everything accomplished, and now you're going to throw down a government just because we've not even hit the year mark yet. And you have 3 more years to go, but you don't want to allow progress to be made that way. And that's it. I mean, you had new ministers as well, Oral, that had to learn where the bathrooms are in the government building, much less getting to a custom of how the whole civil service and the government itself works. And you have to give that time, and you have to give it the issue of seeing the fruits that have been able to come out of your labor. And you haven't given it time.
You look at the problems that you just mentioned, but there are also some issues. When you speak with the local population, and they tell you, they watch and they listen to parliamentary meetings, and there's so many things. Like, an example, there was a whole issue of the AUC, and also it was mentioned, which I brought up also to your faction leader in Parliament, that people from that institution met with you, Mr. Myers,
That's
and
correct.
also the minister at the time, Shigimoto, and it gave the impression that you all actually worked out some deal for the university in terms of avoiding
Taxes.
Yes.
But you know, Oral, these are some of the things, right? In St. Maarten, you get this feeling, and had government been able to continue, you would have not had no court case, and you would not have had the issue itself. You know what the discussion was with the former owners of AUC, that they had come to the government, which was, and basically the 3 of us, and we were introduced by them via one of the largest accounting firms on the island. And the first discussion was this could be a great windfall for St. Maarten, because with the selling of AUC, that the country itself would have gotten a huge profit tax position. When we met with the former owner, they told us about the great opportunity of the DeVry buying into AUC, and we were very ecstatic because, one, they were going to pump another $50 million in new buildings and in the campus, which they did, and also bring in much more students, which would allow people to rent the homes and things like that. And then the discussion went on and there, that what needed to be done to make this happen. And one of the issues was the issue of security. The next one was, would we be forthcoming and open to this kind of investment on the island? We said yes, because it was great for the country. And then the issue came up about taxes, and the discussion that went on at that time, that we would not forgive any taxes that had to be done, but prior for us approving any new permits or whatever, that they had to finalize the taxes that were still outstanding to the government of St. Maarten. And in that phase, they had to go and speak to the tax office itself of the country. The ministers never can sit down, oral, and I can't tell you, or no 3 ministers can sit down and say, listen, you no longer owe taxes, because that is not how the laws of our country work. The only ones that can really give that kind of position is the tax office of the country. And you know, and I find that to be very slanderous for those kind of comments, not by you, but of others to come out and say that we made any deal, because we did not. And that would be foolish, because that would have been a great windfall for the country had we been able to do that. And I think that was a major mistake that was done by the tax office of the country.
But you understand that it appears to many people like that happened.
But oral, many things, everything, it depends on all how you slant the story and how you bring it across. But I can tell you this, Theo Heyliger didn't go and make any deal for that, other than saying to them, listen, we will make sure to expedite permits, for example, for construction and things like that, which, listen, oral, I mean, that is something great for the country. I mean, if you're going to invest $50 million in buildings and equipment, I think you should try and say, listen, we're going to put one person from the Ministry of Romy, one person from the Ministry of Tourism to help you work out this. And then telling them and giving them the opportunity to sit with the tax office, which all of us have the opportunity, and depends on what they say.
Yeah.
That is what government would work out.
They were also requesting special arrangement on that economic zone permit. They received it?
No. Not, well, let me put it this way. Not when I was in office, no.
Because that's a sweetheart deal in a way, because it's 2% you pay on profit tax.
But that was never formalized in a law specifically, in terms of the e-zoning. They call it e-zoning. That was never finalized. So they have never been able to receive that.
Because I know that it's running until, according to the law that I've read from 2001 actually, until 2026.
But you have to, I think you have to go and you have to establish which zone there is. Okay. So, for example, many times this has been brought forward by the harbor and saying, okay, they wanted to establish an e-zone, and my position was to them at that time was, listen, if you establish it in the harbor, why then not establish it for the whole of Phillipsburg? Because where is the e-zone? We're not like Curacao and these other areas that have, you know, import taxes and fees and custom duties, what they call, and then they have a free zone, they call it. So and in our case, it would be called, they call it the e-zone.
So then in St. Martin case, there are no companies here right now that are benefiting from any e-zone arrangement?
Not to my knowledge, you know, or I've learned one thing in government, some of the things you don't know, but not to my knowledge that there is no e-zones on the island. I know there've been many reports that have been written. I could tell you one of by the late great Frank Mingo was written one. By KPMG was written one. I think 2 other companies as well wrote. But in my impression, none have ever been implemented on St. Martin.
Another thing, you know, members of parliament supposed to have some form of power. And another thing too, and you watch parliamentary meetings and you see government-owned companies come to parliament and basically disrespect members of parliament. And for people who understand the parliamentary procedure and the way parliaments operate, they find it so strange that government-owned companies come to parliament and it's as if parliament really can't tell them anything.
Well, you know, Oral, this goes back quite a long way. I can remember in the late 90s, the big discussion point with the Dutch was the fact that government should not be involved with a hands-on approach in the government companies. Because prior to that, you had commissioners used to be sitting on the board of directors of the company. And my impression at that time, because I used to sit on the board as well, I believe at GB at that time, was that you knew what was going on in the company. So then when questions from, at that time, the Island Council came about or whatever, you are able then to answer. When that was changed, that commissioners and island council members and no one could be on the boards, and it goes the same thing for the council of ministers, it goes the same thing for parliamentarians, and that basically then the company does more or less nearly what it needs and what it wants to do, and then the only way that you're able now to regulate the company is via the establishment of policies, and the government-owned companies had to follow the policies that government put forward. But often in time, the government itself writing the policies of that always falls behind. So sometimes it is the company that even writes the own policy that is established by government to them. And that's the case there, yeah. So it wasn't that, and I'll tell you this one, I was never for completely having hands-off approach of the government company, because you're the one that's politically responsible. But now you're more or less nearly hands-off, and they bring you their business plan, and more or less you approve the business plan. If not, the same parliament then oral calls you and says, hey, when are you all going to approve the business plan of the government-owned company?
You know, when you look at the port of St. Maarten, it's like the pride of St. Maarten. People look at the port and say, wow, everybody is so happy. They're proud of it. People come from all over the world, admire it. And then we had the situation with Gibbes and that $10 million that was paid to settle a claim of $100 million. And I think what bothered a lot of people, and myself included too, is when you hear that, well, you know, there's a non-disclosure clause. It's government-owned by the people of St. Maarten. It's a pride of us. But then all of a sudden, the people can't know why that happened. I don't know if you can explain.
In my impression, or if I'm listening to the answers that were given, it was $5 million paid from the harbor, and then basically a new developer that took over the project, they paid 5. So really, in essence, it's $5 million. But that's whether it's
only $5 million will show up on the harbor's balance sheet then.
Well, I don't know its balance sheet, but how I was explained, it's $5 million as a settlement claim from the harbor, and $5 billion as a payment from new developer that would take over the project. Because I want to make sure that we understand too. Government, or if government or its companies have an issue with, just say, let's say, Oral Gibbes, okay? And this thing goes on 5, 10 years in the papers and everything. And especially when it comes to the harbor, you're looking at major cruise lines being involved. You're looking at bondholders being involved. And this case would have continued at least another 10 years of where you had the company itself writing to the cruise lines, writing to the bondholders, and it was not giving a very good name or good impression to bondholders, your cruise line partners and everything. And it started out, Oral also ties in to how government functions. Because when I was there in 2010 is when this agreement, the agreement even started way before even I became minister, and the negotiations continued. It was only during the third year and probably the third government that you find out that the developer couldn't develop all the property on the port. It could only develop 1,000 square meters. So if it had spent and it had went to look for international players on the market to come in and all of these things, the building permit was signed for much more than even 1,000 square meters. So in my essence, I think that it was, look, while nobody wants to pay out claims, it was a good move in the sense of clearing up this attitude of one against the other, playing out in the papers, playing out with shareholders, bondholders, and the cruise lines, that you get rid of the issue and move on to continuing to establish and build a better reputation for the harbor. So sometimes, Oral, and sorry, but I'll just give you an example. When Westin was being built, the owner of Westin came to the executive council, laid down about 15 points of what they needed to be done. I can tell you today, probably not even one of the points was held up by government. And when Westin took us to court, okay, Westin lost because the executive council was not able to do these things, but you gave the impression as a government of St. Maarten that, listen, I'm going to agree and help you with these things. And if that was the same impression given to other developers in the country, then, well, I think it's time that we also live up to our word and give that certain people, when you're investing, whether you be a local investor or whether you be a foreign investor, that we live up to our word. And if not, let us be then man or woman enough to be able to settle.
And you know, another thing is too is that many of us as locals, we hear a minister sitting in Parliament that is speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister and saying a group of locals are the ones who came in and partially rescued this whole settlement. And then we didn't hear a Heyliger, a Myers,
Oh boy, if
a
you hear
Maarten.
Heyliger, boy, it'll be another thing again. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
We heard a different name.
Right.
And, so a lot of people really was like, hey man, the ministers really are taking us for a ride.
Right, yeah.
And, okay, your MP and faction leader rightfully questioned that in Parliament.
That's right.
But I think it created the impression that someone was trying to mislead the public.
You know, Oral, and it's interesting how you say that. You know, if you have locals come about and come in, how did they get there? And then the big question is, oh, they must know Theo, they must know Frankie, or they must know Tamara, they must know Leona, they must know somebody in government, and then it tarnishes the whole thing. You know, I agree with you, Oral, in the point that you and I walk down the street, Oral and Theo cooking up a deal. But if it's some, let's say, investor that has come to St. Maarten and now is considered to be a local, it's okay. You know, they can buy up all the companies on the island, nobody questions them. God forbid that a family member of mine opens a hot dog stand somewhere. Oh, they want it all, you know, and they don't realize that you know, your family has been around for centuries, and that, you know, you were one of the original families on the island, and that's why any of the families that have been there, you try and help them as much as possible. But so I agree with you, but you know, to see that the same locals come out and also as forceful as some of these other families that have now settled here, it gets to a point where you really got to look hard for them now to be able to come forward, and it's getting even harder by the day, because a lot of the families themselves take the easier route and say, well, let us sell the land or let us sell the business, and here you go. And I could tell you quite a few of them that have, you know. One of them, you know, I sat down with the family, I said, but why are you selling out a business that you have built for so long? And he told me, well, Theo, I built this business for 40 years, and my son and my daughter, they don't want to continue. So what am I to do? You want me to stay in this business and not look for what my retirement is going to be? And I partially understand, but I would have rather loved to have seen, you know, it stay in local hands. But in essence, it didn't.
But then also what I've noticed as a local person, it's extremely difficult to do business on this island. You're cut off many times, even by civil servants in government. The corruption right now, and I hate to use the word, but I'm sorry, I have to use the corruption right now within the civil service corps. It's reaching alarming levels where outsiders can easily get things done, and local business people are the ones that are really pushed into a corner, and it's very, very frustrating.
Well, I know, I'll tell you something, Oral, with the procedures that we have in place. I mean, the amount of procedures that you have in place, which are so-called put there to streamline and make everything transparent as possible, actually, you know, lead to other transactions happening in the island, and it's a pity, because you want to see things moving for the country. You want to see building permits coming out on time. You want to see other permits coming out on time that you want to see the continued development in the country, and especially for your local people themselves, you know. And like I said, and that's why many of the questions are always there: how many permits are being signed? When did they really get in? When did they come out? Were there changes made to it? I mean, that's the only reasons and the ways that you can actually look at certain things like that. But as a parliament itself, you seeing that on a daily basis, you don't.
Yeah. Heyliger, I want to still go back. Government-owned companies make up something like 40% of the GDP of St. Martin. They employ, along with government. So in essence, government is the largest employer.
Correct.
Before 1995, that was not the case.
No, that was not the case.
You've been in office for 20 years now, elected for 20 years.
Yeah.
How you feel when you look at the situation today? Because most people find that it's not healthy when you have government as your major employer on the island. It never used to be like that.
Oral, it's again interesting you come up with that. If you look back at the philosophy of the Democratic Party that was built by my grandfather and Clem Labega, and you look back at the eras when they were around, the era that they were around, you would have seen exactly what you're saying, that the private sector by far outflanked the public sector in terms of not only employment, but also in the essence of the salary scales that they were paying. And that government was small and was able to answer the same permits that we're talking about, the same requests of the population that we're talking about. And then you had, of course, the Dutch government at that time saying too as well that things had to change. And that's when higher supervision came in as well, and a lot of procedures were put in, a lot of new policies put in, and you had a whole new transition of government to where now departments, heads of departments, sectors, heads of sectors, ministries, and constantly being built. And now the situation is, of course, like you stated, government itself is not only probably the largest employer, but also the best paid in terms of competing now with the private sector for personnel. But at the same time now, the issue of getting the right people in the right positions is becoming even harder. And if you look at what the Dutch have been doing to St. Maarten over the last few years, to where now the screening process of nearly any job that you want in government, you have to be screened to be able to. And people always say, yeah, but what's the problem with screening? There's no real problem of screening, other than the fact that basically now in our system, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's not that you're innocent until proven guilty. And the situation is coming to a point where how are you going to even get your people into the positions that you need, because the high requirements that are being put forward because of all these reports that come from the Netherlands and everything about your government and all of that. And especially now, Oral, when you look at our judicial system and you start to see, but where are our local people in the public prosecutor's office, in the justice system itself? You need to start that, because what is happening now, if you just see the kind of cases that go on and can destroy you. I mean, I have seen people that, and I don't want to call their names because they went through so much harassment over the years itself, but they're completely beaten down. They don't even want another position anywhere close to government because of the hardships that they went on and their families have gone on. And that's the hurtful part too, or that we don't look at in terms of all of these situations that are going on.
No, because it's a very small community. And the thing is that just yesterday I was reading that Mr. Badajo, who's one of the persons that had his home searched, said that it's politically motivated. So if it's politically motivated, I have to ask the strongest politician on the island to respond to that.
Well, if it's politically motivated, it can't become for me, because if I politically can motivate the public prosecutor's office, who got probably me under more scrutiny than anybody else, I mean, then I can see, it can't come from me. Let me put it that way. You know that I've had enough issues dealing with the Dutch politicians, and you've even had judges come out and make statements right in the middle of an election year and election time, anything to discredit me as much as possible. So I don't think he's on the right ball game with my person.
I didn't call your name. I just said because.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, Oral, because I don't. There's one thing I think that you have to draw the line when it comes to that. You're not going to hear me slandering people out there and coming up with rumors, because that this affects not only you as a person, but it affects your entire family and the friends and the people and everybody around you. And these are situations that you can't take lightly.
No, the reason I ask is because when you hear the term politically motivated, then it means it got to come from somewhere in government.
Right.
That's the reason why I ask you about that.
Well, I mean, in my impression, it is strictly from the prosecutor's office. You would question yourself, why now they would come up with that? But again, it's also a case that has been going on for quite some time. But yeah, and that's another issue is that, these cases go on 4, 5, 6, 8 years sometimes.
And this is too long.
It destroys you, or because you're thinking about it. Oh, they're coming to pick me up any day, and they're coming to check on me every day, and your whole family is terrorized. I mean, that's why I brought up also that there should be a time limit. But then they started to say, oh, well, we don't have enough personnel, and but I think it's just a way of being able to hold you down and keep you down. The case that goes on against my uncle, for example, for the issue of vote buying. This is now in its fifth year, and constantly costing money. And every time that the case is done, and someone else makes a statement, then we start totally Heyliger up new, as they would say, and they're constantly trying to see how we could get Theo into this case or whatever, and get my name in it, because that's really the person that they want.
Well, the judge said that you should be the person in front of him and not anyone else.
Yeah, but that's what he said. I mean, and I wasn't even around, and this is the situation that, I mean, if you shouldn't be a judge if you already put judgment on me, because that means that you never even heard me. I was never even questioned because I was not around the situation. But how can you hold me accountable? But these are things that, or as a lot of people say, but Theo, we don't hear from you and all. I say, yeah, but sometimes you have to sit back and you have to assess the situation too, because at the end of the day, if all the guns are pointed at you and the real one that they always want is me, well, you got to look at what you say very carefully these days, and that's how we're operated in government, especially for the last year too, Oral, is that you have to make sure all the T's are crossed, I's dotted, and perhaps then it doesn't move to the speed or to the waltz or the calypso that many of these people wanted.
But do you see how it's reflecting in the community? Because when I speak with people, a lot of people, and I've said it in the program too, how I feel about that with you, they look at you as the person who is supposed to be the leader, but you're not hearing, you're not seeing that leadership, and for a lot of people, I'm telling you, you speak to average man in the street, they say, they don't like that.
Yeah, but Oral, it's not in my nature, and I don't think it'll ever be in my nature to constantly come out, pound the chest that, well, listen, we're working on this, we're working on that. Probably because I've been hit and hurt so often in the political field that I don't make statements until you're ready to really show the people. I mean, you have certain politicians, man, that could talk so incredibly well that, there it is. But then you ask and you question, okay, now show me all of this talk that you've done. Show me what you're really going to do. And they can't show you. I'm the complete opposite to that. You won't be hearing me talk until something is ready to be shown and achieved to the people. Now, do I come out swinging all the time? And I might agree with you that probably you should hear from me more often. But I look at it that you have a job to do your job, and basically come out and speak when it is really needed that you come out and speak, not on every position that you have to take a complete stance. And that's why also, Oral, you have a party too. You need to make sure give those same MPs that are there too, that they also need to have their spotlight too, to be able to vent their opinions to the population too. And that's why you're part of a party system that is not only Theo that you got to hear from, but you also have to hear from the others, and they have to also prove themselves to the population. And like I said, a lot of things we've been working on, and perhaps not been vocal enough to be able to push them forward. You might be that you have to speak some more is probably a good advice.
I mean, I had your faction leader here, Mr. Myers, and Myers, And I tell you, I've been in this business now doing television interviews for 33 years.
Right.
And I've seen him when he started. I've seen you when you started. But I gotta say, man, he's improved a lot. The guy is good.
No, he's a very good
He is
speaker.
incredible.
Frankie is a great debater, great speaker. He's of course improved much more over the years, but I think he's always been a great debater, great speaker.
No, and really didn't show and didn't bend under pressure. So I made it.
No, you had him under a lot of pressure. Yeah.
But coming down to Governor Holiday.
Yes.
Speaking with people on the street, some people say to me, and I've read it somewhere too. It said like, man, these days it looks like the Council of Ministers is disrespecting the governor. They're not listening to the governor. They're trying to force his hand in signing that resolution. Do you think the people are wrong, or that's a wrong perception that people are getting of this whole situation right now, where the Council of Ministers refuse to resign from office? They're asking the governor to sign that resolution to dissolve Parliament. I asked MP Myers what he feels about it. He said the government that you support, you're the leader of that party, also supports the Council of Ministers in that action. But you think the people are wrong in their observation in this whole action, that it's really disrespectful to the governor?
Well, Oral, first of all, let me make sure I explain you. I have a lot of respect for Governor Holiday. I have a lot of respect for the Holiday family in particular. It's been a local family. They've been able to achieve some very important positions in our society. I worked with the governor on the the selection process, or the vetting process for the Council of Ministers. So I can only tell you that I have respect for him. But at the same time, you have the political position, and then you have that of the governor. The signing of the resolution that has been signed by the Prime Minister that sends up to the dissolution of Parliament was sent up to the governor. The position that the governor would have is really to make sure that the laws of the country are being applied, and if he feels that they're not being applied, then he would be able to send it up to the Netherlands, the Council of Ministers, or the Kingdom Council of Ministers, that he doesn't basically agree, but he has to sign the resolution. There's a lot of differences between 2013 and today. This resolution was signed by the Prime Minister. This Council of Ministers never resigned prior to sending up the resolution. So there's very big differences to 2013 and now. And at that time in 2013, the governor wrote that and he sent it to the Council of Ministers, that listen, there is, according to our Constitution, the great division between Parliament and that of government. And based on the articles that have been used by the Council of Ministers, he sees it valid that they could call elections. At the same time, the position of Parliament is known that it no longer supports the Council of Ministers. Now, the vagueness comes into the Constitution of, but how does this work? And Oral, it took the United States of America centuries of being able to, work out their Constitution. The issue is that, I will tell you this one, that while it is clear in certain cases, some work probably needs to get into our Constitution to make sure that we take out the kinks out of this. And the Constitution probably looked into the position that, who sits in the Council of Ministers and who is going to be sitting in Parliament. And that's where you probably get the discussion going on now and debate that there is. But again, my impression to the governor at now, I said, Governor, there must be a clear message now coming to the population and also these ship jumpers that this nonsense is no longer going to be tolerated for the country. And while the question a lot of people ask me, but are you prepared for elections? I keep telling them that I'm a person that believes in prior planning prevents poor performance. And I'm a planner. I like to plan. I can tell you what will happen in year 3 of the government, year 4 of the government, whatever. But I mean, not being able to plan your 4-year governing program becomes an issue. Then why even write a governing program? That's one. And listen, again, elections come, we support the issue and the call for elections, and if it comes, well then it is going to be on a very low key playing field of elections. It's not going to be the kind of atmosphere that the people are accustomed to, and yeah, well then perhaps you will get a very low type of issue of morale coming out too. But it has to come out that the situation has got to stop.
But a lot of people say the difference between now and 2013 is that in 2015 now, 8 members of parliament brought a motion of no confidence against the Council of Ministers. That didn't happen in 2013.
Yeah, but we sent, first of all, the letter that was sent to the governor stating that the withdrawal of the support. And you couldn't call a meeting of no confidence in the very first day because you are not given the floor. You could remember the famous, you do not have the word. Or also, if you were talking about thwarting democracy and thwarting the issues of parliament, that was true stopping of how the country is to run. I mean, there's very clear differences of that. Nobody has been doing that at all in our position that we have there right now. Meetings were called, meetings were held. Some wanted meetings to be held even sooner than what a specified period of time is for parliamentary meetings to be called. And I think we're really playing semantics when we come out and say things like that.
I've been on the phone in the last 24 hours, for many hours, people abroad asking me about St. Maarten, asking me about the crime situation, seeing what I've posted on my Facebook page, and when they are so concerned and worried about St. Maarten, I try to tell people, okay, it's not as bad as it appears, but something is wrong. There's too many guns on the island. There are too many people, too many armed robberies. There are too many people with guns walking around. Something has to, as the person with the most votes in the last election, the person that, with the party that supported the government with 10 members of parliament, what are you prepared to bring to the government to correct this problem? Because it cannot continue like this.
Or, one of the big debates or discussions we had as a coalition with the minister itself, you need more police to be on the streets. You need more vehicles to show presence of the police force. Some came out at that time, well, we need to build and rent police stations all through the districts. And my position was, look, police stations themselves only house the police. They put them inside. That means they're not visible. Perfect example, that horrendous crime in town is right outside the police station.
And Sunday,
the Sunday one is right across from the police station in Colby. Oral.
Simpson Bay.
Simpson Bay. Okay? If you go by the one, the police station in Colby, there's certain times it's open, there's certain times it's closed. I mean, it's like going to the shop, we'll be already open from 8 to 5. You really need police cars, police members to be in the districts that we have. And if you don't go and you get more police, more cars on the road, having these police stations all through the communities is not going to work or well, because you need the visibility of our police. In addition to that, I spoke to the minister at that time. I said, but listen, you have a lot of retired police. Why can't we allow those retired police to also work as, for example, an auxiliary service outside of their pensionable age for government itself, that society can pay in a special fund for more police to be on. Most of these police, I mean, I've spoken to even Yanchi, for example, and he is he held a gun for nearly 30 years, and then after on pension, he's no longer allowed to have his gun because now he's retired. If you bring back, not saying him, but if you bring back others like him to be able to work a few hours in a week, be visible throughout the society, I think, Oral, also we're doing two things. You're showing your police officers that have done well for the society itself, that we still appreciate them, and you're also allowing more visibility to come out for the country. If you look, Oral, in the U.S., and I've said it, the airport of Miami has a police station and a police force right in there. The port of Miami, same thing. You go to the mall, Aventura Mall, you go to Florida Mall, there's always a police car outside. One night I ended up in the emergency room because I was sick. You go through the emergency room, there's a police car and there's a police officer there, all showing you the visibility of police officers on the road. And that is something that we need to have here. You need to show that you have more police on the road. You need to have that blue on the road. I mean, having, like I said, having buildings all through the place is just going to pay somebody rent. Take the rent and pay police officers, hire police officers.
But are you very concerned about the crime situation?
Oh, it's an alarming rate. Or it's come to a point where it's become to where they're telling the law. These groups are telling the law, listen, and they put it even on Facebook. We're coming up. We can see which group can get the most robberies in 1 week or 1 day. And now it's no longer a robbery. You're beating the person up, and if you're lucky that you got beat up, if not shot, and it's a terrible situation to where we are looking. But now we go a little further, Oral. If you even come down heavy on them, where do you put them? You can't even incarcerate them because our prison is full. And that was a situation we told the Council of Ministers, you need to reallocate certain funds to be able to get the expansion of the prison going. And that is something that still has to be finalized. And I'm hoping that the minister announces that within short.
We just about out of time. So you think we're going to have elections, or the government that you support will resign?
No, I think we're gonna have elections, Oral, and I think it will send like I said, a clear, strong message to those that that take this thing as some sort of a game, throwing down governments, putting the country through all this turmoil. That you really need to sit down, have dialogue, and do things for the society, and be able to accomplish. But again, I say it again, that within the political schemes that we have and the political sphere that we have, you must have the perseverance and you must have the patience. And you must be able not only to complain, but also show how you intend to fix the problem, or how do you intend to fix the challenge.
But what would you say to the population of St. Maarten that is losing patience every day?
Yeah, like, the population, I mean, we all have to stand strong. Let me tell you, I'm part of the population. As I look in the mirror sometimes, I ask myself, why do I even continue? I mean, it's 20 years being in politics. The only thing that I position, and I say that it's for a stronger, better St. Maarten, and that we need, in this election to come up with one clear position that within the next 4 years that this system has to change. It have to change.
So you're not looking at any kind of arrangement if the other groups comes, let's have a government, everyone together, and a government of unity for St. Maarten?
Well, Oral, I stated it this week as well, that we gave up the perception of all the power. And I've always stated it to ministers as well. As long as I'm able, or any of the MPs, able to walk into a minister office and is able to sit with them and be able to have a conversation and to discuss policies and information, I will support a government like that. I did not withdraw my support from the government. I was not available to be able to speak to any of the coalition members to try and rectify the situation. But I think everybody has, sort of drawn their own conclusions.
That was just out of time. 30 seconds in closing.
Well, thank you, Oral, and thank you, televiewers, and I wish everybody God's strength and God bless the Maarten.
And that's it for now. See you next time. Till then, good night. Take care. Bye.